1 week at the start of August, two package ecosystems were compromised at scale. On the NPM side, a self-propagating worm published malicious versions of hundreds of packages. On the Arch side, the user repository was locked down entirely, twice. Neither attack exploited a vulnerability. There is no CVE for either of them. In both cases, the attackers used the maintenance model exactly as designed, and that is what makes them worth an episode. Here is the week. On the 30th of July, Arch Linux disabled package adoption in the user repository because attackers were taking ownership of abandoned packages and pushing malicious commits into them. 2 days later, on the 1st of August, that was not enough, and all pushes were disabled. 3 days after that, on the 4th of August, a worm began publishing backdoored versions on NPM, starting from a compromised maintainer account. 2 ecosystems, 6 days, no relationship between the two groups. Start with what the NPM registry still remembers. Every package has a time object recording when each version was published. Ask it about version 6.0 of this package, and it answers with a timestamp on the 4th of August at 9:35 in the morning, to the millisecond. That is the first known malicious release of the campaign. Now, ask whether that version still exists. The answer is false. The record of the publication survives. The version itself is gone. The tags tell the rest of the story. Latest points at 5.6, the release from before the incident. The pre-release tags still point at 6.0 alphas and betas, which were published earlier and were never part of the attack. So the tag was not deleted, it was rolled backwards over a release that had already gone out. Anyone who installed during that window has a copy of something the registry will no longer hand out. The mechanism is worth being precise about. A maintainer account was compromised. The malicious release did not just carry a payload, it carried a worm, code that searched the machine it landed on for credentials and used any it found to publish backdoored versions of every other package those credentials could reach. That is why the count runs into the hundreds. It was not hundreds of separate break-ins. It was one, followed by automatic propagation through tokens that were lying around in developer environments and build pipelines. The Arch side reached a similar scale by a completely different route, and it needed no stolen credentials at all. The user repository lets anyone submit a build recipe, and it lets anyone adopt a package whose maintainer has walked away. That adoption mechanism is not a bug. It is how a volunteer repository survives people losing interest. Attackers simply adopted abandoned packages and then pushed commits, which is exactly what a legitimate new maintainer would do. When adoption was disabled, the activity continued through newly created accounts. It matters what an entry in that repository actually is, because it is not what most people assume. Fetch one. It is about a kilobyte of shell. There is a source line pointing at wherever the maintainer chose, a checksum, and functions that run during the build. When you install from the user repository, you're not downloading a signed artifact that somebody vetted. You're agreeing to execute this file on your machine as your user with whatever it says in it. Put the two side by side, and the shared shape appears. In neither case did anyone find a flaw in the registry software. In neither case was there an exploit, a payload against a server, or a vulnerability to patch. What was attacked in both cases was trust that had been delegated and then left unattended, a token that still worked, and a package that nobody was watching anymore. The registries responded the only way they could, by switching off the mechanism that was being used. So what can you actually check? For anything you self-host or depend on, the advisory database will answer directly, and you can query it from a shell. Ask it about a specific identifier, and it returns the score, the package, the range of versions that are affected, and the first version that is not. That is a definite statement about your own installation, rather than a headline telling you that some version of something is bad. The second thing you can check is integrity. Every published version carries a hash of its contents. If you pin a version in a lock file, that hash is what your installer verifies before unpacking anything. Pinning a version alone is not enough because a tag can move. Pinning with the hash means a republished version under the same number will not match, and the install fails instead of silently succeeding. That gives 4 habits worth having, none of which require any new tooling. Commit your lock file and install from it, so that what you get is what you pinned. Prefer the hash over the tag, because the hash cannot be moved. Do not let build pipelines hold published credentials they do not need, because that is what turned one compromised account into hundreds. And when a package comes from a repository where anybody can take over an abandoned entry, read the recipe before you build it. One last thing, because it is the part people find uncomfortable. Neither of these incidents can be prevented by patching, and neither would have been caught by scanning for known vulnerabilities, because at the moment they happened, there was nothing known to scan for. The only thing that reduced the damage in both cases was the delay between publication and adoption. The packages were pulled and the tags were rolled back before most installations picked them up. Being slightly slow to upgrade is not negligence. Sometimes it is the entire defense.